Operation Basketball. Those of you watching on the ACC network and in our room, our local television cameras, we have Roy Williams from the University of North Carolina. Coach, if you would just start off with giving us how practice has gone so far and your impressions of the team.
Well, we've only had 4 practices. No coach is going to say they're satisfied, but I've been pleased with what we've done. We've thrown a lot of things at 4 freshmen. We have 1 senior, 2 juniors. Everybody else is freshman, sophomore. We have 2 guys who are coming back from ACL surgery. So we're trying to teach a little bit and at the same time pushing to try to get the pace of the game the way we want to get it to.
If you have a question, raise your hand and the microphone will get to you. And we have one back here. If we have a microphone, that would be great.
Good speed, quick.
Yeah,
microphone.
Hey Coach, could you talk about the 2 guys that you brought here today, James Michael and Reggie Bullock, and what you're expecting from them this year?
You know, they're extremely important to our basketball team. James Michael and Reggie both were really good, quote, complementary players, or role players, or whatever you want to call them last year. I mean, the other team, their coaching staff talked about Tyler Zeller, Kendall Marshall, Harrison Barnes, John Henson. They didn't really talk very much about James Michael or Reggie, and so they average 8 points a game, 6 points a game. Well, now we've got to get them to step up huge and move those numbers way up against defenses that are going to be aimed to stop them. But those 2 guys probably had the best first 4 days of anybody else. They're really stepping up and showing some leadership qualities on the court, and they're both great kids. We enjoy being around and enjoy coaching every day. But we need both those guys to have big years.
Roy, a follow-up to that, James Michael had to step up into a different role at the end of the season because of injury. How much did that help him coming into this year, kind of knowing what that role would be?
Well, I think it really did help him. You know, he got off to such a bad start. His mom, his dad, me, him, we were all trying to figure out who is this guy out there on the court those first 12, 14 games. But I loved his toughness, the way he hung in there and just kept going to practice every day and trying to get better. And all of a sudden, things did open up for him. And when we had John go down, James Michael was just truly big time for us. But he had started playing well, or much better, quite a few games before that. And hopefully that'll give us some confidence what he can do and get started even off a high note right from the start this year.
Back over here.
Coach, you lost some good players last year, but more importantly, you lost some key leaders. Who are you looking for to be your leaders this year, and what do you expect from your leaders on your team?
You know, it's funny the way you said that. You said importantly we lost some good players, but more importantly we lost good leaders. I'd rather have good players. You know, I can try to give them some leadership kind of thing, but we lost 4 big-time players, and we're 4 of the top 17 picks in the draft. And with them, when they bring real leadership, there's no question. Tyler Zeller being a senior, the academic All-American Player of the Year, and it's impossible for anyone to have more respect than when his teammates gave Tyler. And Kendall Marshall is as good a floor leader as I've ever seen, 351 assists with a team that didn't shoot very well. So we do have losses physically with the talent, but as you say, with their leadership. But James Michael and Reggie are getting the respect of their teammates, and that helps when you're trying to be a leader. The point guard spot, particularly the way we play, is a position of leadership. Dexter Strickland and Leslie McDonald both starting in 4th year, even though Leslie was out the entire year last year. They're going to be good leaders, but right now they're concerned about themselves quite a bit too, because they're both coming off of ACL surgery.
Coach, when you talked about the point guard, it's so important on your team. You lost a great point guard. Where do you stand with that position today?
Well, 3 guys, Marcus Page, Luke Davis, Dexter Strickland, will be playing that spot. Dexter played it a little bit as a freshman, a little bit the second half of his sophomore year, and a little bit the first half of last year. So he's the only one that has game experience at our level. Luke was a transfer student from Gardner Webb, set out last year, and of course Marcus Page, a freshman. But those guys are good basketball players. Marcus is very mature. You know, he is a freshman, but he knows how to play. He has tremendous savvy, and you know, get Dexter healthy and Luke a little more playing time. All 3 of those guys are going to be given opportunity.
Back in the back.
Coach, you've had to reload your roster twice before after your national championship team. Does that help knowing what to expect this year, having to do it again?
It would give me a lot of confidence if both years had been the same and both years had been successful. You know, 2006, after winning in 05, was as much fun as I've ever had coaching. 2010, after winning in 09, was about as little fun as I've ever had coaching. But we got beat up so badly by the injuries in 2010. But we talk about it openly, particularly with Dexter and Leslie there, because they were there in 2010. And so hopefully, number one, we'll stay healthy. Number two, we'll play closer to our potential to make sure we don't have that kind of year. And number three, we got to get lucky.
Coach, do you notice that your players are working harder to keep your blood pressure lower as you're recovering?
You know, I told them I'm not supposed to be going wacko on them. And the first day of practice, it lasted about 10 minutes in there. And so I told my wife that night I only got a little too wacko twice. And so I told her I was going to be much better on the second practice. And then I went about 15 times then. But the players are concerned. They were a great source of strength for me. The way they handled the whole thing was something I took a great deal of pride in. But they're trying to do the right thing. It is a good group of kids, and I think they like me this mellow. You know, I'm trying to stay that way. But another 2.5 weeks, they're going to release me completely. So I think they're trying to get on my good side right now.
Coach P.J. Harrison came to Chapel Hill with such a reputation as a great shooter. At times last year struggled a bit. How has he been? What is your expectation for him?
Well, he was a great shooter last year. He just wasn't a great maker. You know, that's the problem. But you know, everybody says you like shooters. Hell, I like makers.
Yeah.
That's the kind of guys I like. But you know, PJ shot it better in practice so far this year. The good thing about PJ is that he probably took more charges last year than anyone on our team other than Tyler Zeller. He can help us on the backboards. He can help us in so many other ways. He's a good defensive player, but there's no question when he's shooting the ball in the hole, he's a hell of a weapon.
Mike Slarte.
Coach, when you look at the neighborhood, and then we're really talking about the guys in Raleigh and NC State, does that put a charge, a little spring in your step to get you working harder, even though I know you're coming back to the surgery and you're on the mend? Does that kind of not infiltrate, but kind of permeate throughout your team that, hey, they're talking about somebody else instead of us?
Well, Mike, I think one thing, I'm old enough to I remember when North Carolina State, Duke, Virginia, Maryland, everybody was great, you know, in the top 10 in the country kind of thing. And I think it's fantastic for Tobacco Road, for North Carolina State to be up there again. They deserve their rankings and what people are saying about it because they succeeded last year. They played very, very well. I'm hoping that it makes my team hungry, that we want to be that team that's talked about. I loved it last year when we were picked number one. I like that position, but North Carolina State is going to be a big-time basketball team. They deserve the talk that they're getting right now.
Right here in front.
Coach Bryce Johnson and Joel James are different players, but how will they kind of complement your front?
You know, it's crazy because James Michael is a guy that's got some time. Desmond Hubert, almost got no time last year. And then you have Bryce and Joel, two freshmen. All three of those kids have a chance to be very good players. We need them to speed up that process. You know, number one, I'd like it to be my lifetime, but I'd really like it to be this year. You know, this year, next year, that kind of thing. But Bryce is a little smoother. Joel's just a big body, and they are very different. But boy, you talk about wonderful kids. They're really wonderful kids, and I'm going to enjoy coaching the heck out of them.
What do you want to be the identity of your team known for this year?
You know, it's strange. When I first started coaching, when I was at Kansas, people talked about how hard we played. And they said, boy, I wish Roy Williams was a better recruiter because he can really coach. And now they talk about our offensive play, and they say, God, I wish he could coach. He can really recruit, but he can't coach worth a darn. But, you know, I really love it when my teams are talked about playing really hard and being really unselfish. And then hopefully this team will be able to do those kind of things.
Any other questions for Coach Williams? If not, Coach, best of luck to you in the target.